Welcome to Annapolis Mosaics. Our program spotlights people in our community who are involved in activities intended to promote good human relations. I am Michael Keller, the chair of the Annapolis Human Relations Commission and your host. The commission is a city board that seeks to promote equal opportunity and to eliminate discrimination. My guests today are Stuart Rice and Christina Seidel of Wreaths across America. Welcome to Annapolis Mosaics.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One of the things that I think is most important in a mission statement is that it be short and that anybody can commit it to memory and recite it very quickly. And Wreaths Across America is one of the few organizations that actually has accomplished that. Its mission statement, which is on your website, is very simple. It's remember, honor, teach. That's it. Could you explain to our viewers what that means and how you carry it out?
I'll go.
Okay.
Well, it's funny you say that because I have it right here, remember, honor, and teach. I think the founders of the organization started with the fact of wanting everyone to remember that they're soldiers every day giving their lives, even at this moment. And they're soldiers that have given their lives all throughout our history. And they just wanted a simple event to remember that. In doing that, you also honor what they sacrificed for all of us. And I think the final component of teach is that they really wanted our youth, our children, to be involved in this ceremony and in this event, to teach them to continue remembering and honoring.
One man's annual tribute to veterans inspired a legion of volunteers and gave rise to your organization. Could you tell our viewers about it? I think they would find it inspiring.
Well, yes, it was a gentleman from Maine, and he made wreaths. So he had a little surplus, and I'm going to cheat here, in 1992.
Okay.
And he had been as a child to Arlington and was impressed with the graves there, and he said, let's take them down. And someone else from Maine got a truck and they brought it down, and they did it quietly for many, many years. And then in 2005, there was a photo on the internet of the snow and the flags and the wreaths, and that's when it started blossoming. And in 2008, it became a 501c, whatever it is.
501c3.
Yes.
Nonprofit.
And then it has expanded to, I think, all national cemeteries have some.
I know it's about 1,400 national cemeteries all throughout the 50 states and then also abroad. There's some, I think France participates in some of the national cemeteries over there and so on. So yeah, it's international.
So this is truly an international organization.
Absolutely.
And you exist in all 50 states. Wow. Well, could you describe the wreath-laying ceremony itself? What does it involve, and how often does it take place?
Well, it is an annual event.
Okay.
It is now every, I want to say, second Saturday in December.
Right.
So this year it falls on December the 15th. And basically it's a wonderful concept in the fact that every participating national cemetery, these ceremonies take place simultaneously, exactly at noon. So every participating ceremony will be doing the same ceremony at the same time. It starts at noon, and there is a short thanking of folks that have come. We also then lay ceremonial wreaths for every branch of the military.
Okay.
And then there's normally a few short remarks, and then at that point in time we ask every volunteer that is there to start laying the wreaths. And it's lovely, it really is.
Do you actually build into that the time changes between areas, or is it noon, whatever time it is, it's noon at that particular
I believe it's
time?
noon, wherever
so
your
it's-
time frame is.
Yeah. So some do it. For example, California would do it a little later.
Exactly.
And that-
Yep,
so
yep.
it's just you do it right at noon. Well, you've already given our viewers a sense of the scope of the operation in just describing the fact that you've got it in all 50 states and internationally. But about how many of these memorial wreaths are actually laid each year? What kind of numbers are you dealing with?
Well, the last count I saw was, well, that was 2014, so it's got to be a heck of a lot more by now. But it was 700,000 wreaths that were laid all throughout all of the participating cemeteries. Arlington alone is about 250,000 wreaths that are laid at Arlington, and then the rest are all the participating national cemeteries throughout.
Yeah, I think that Wreaths Across America had a goal to cover all of Arlington National Cemetery, which is huge.
Yes.
Was that met?
I read that it was.
Yes.
I read that it was. There's about 400,000 folks that are buried at Arlington, but sometimes those are the soldiers, but then sometimes there's a spouse and so on that's there. But there's, from what I read, there's about 245,000 grave sites, and yes, they were able to cover everyone.
Yeah. How do you manage to make that many wreaths? What's the process for making them or getting them, or?
Well, it's the original gentleman who started this process. It's his wreath making company.
Okay.
And so back in the day, he donated them. Now we order them. Each
Okay.
participating cemetery has a fundraiser to raise money for people can buy the wreaths, and then they are shipped to us
By one company.
by one company. Yes.
By one little wreath making company up in Maine.
Does
Very
all of these wreaths?
Yes.
I think I find that's really extraordinary.
Yes.
Yep, extremely impressive, I
You know,
agree.
because when you did talk about it earlier about this gentleman's contribution, and didn't make the connection that they actually still produce
Yes.
this.
They do.
Is this a family operation? I mean, is it something that it is?
Yes, and it was a husband and wife.
Right, and I believe that his wife is the executive director of Wreaths Across America, and he still manages the business. But I read.
And the actual wreath price is $15, and it has remained $15. Ever since I became involved in this project in 2009, and it's still $15. Which is nice. I think that makes it affordable for most folks to get involved.
Absolutely. Do you do displays of wreaths at columbariums? If you're familiar with what a columbarium is.
No.
A columbarium is not a grave site. You don't have a headstone or anything like that there. Columbarium is fixed. They've become pretty popular. Is mainly for people who want to find a place for their ashes to be. They have them at Arlington.
Okay.
I know that because my late mother and father are interred in a columbarium at Arlington, and the number of people who are choosing that are actually increasing because of both expense, but also because it's. A lot of respects, it's just something that people are finding more comfortable. In other words, they choose cremation rather than burial, and as a consequence, you're going to find that more and more people are choosing that. Does Wreaths Across America accommodate that in any way? Again, you're not talking about people who have urns at home or something like that. You're talking about structures that are designed for large numbers of people who want their remains to be stored in a facility after the body's been cremated. And there's a large columbarium at Arlington, for example. I'm sure that they exist at other cemeteries as well. Is this something that you could that you would accommodate or even think about accommodating, or?
Honestly, I don't know.
Yeah.
Each cemetery has a location leader.
Right.
I'm sure Arlington has probably several location leaders, and I think that would be a question for them. But I really can't see any reason why not.
These are also the cemeteries that Wreaths Across America uses are national cemeteries.
Right.
So it's not down the street and you're a veteran.
Okay.
That sort of thing. So, for example, here in Annapolis, I mean, there hasn't been a new person buried in there in 40 years, I think.
I thought there was somebody just
Really?
recently.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a national cemetery in Annapolis.
Well, that's
Well, that's where we
are.
It's right on West Street.
Right, that's
Yes,
where we
that's
lay
it.
the wreaths
Yeah.
on,
That's
right.
Yeah.
So so there are no, what did you call it?
Columbarium. A columbarium is a place in which there's an actual structure, and then
Right.
there are individual compartments, and you put the remains of the people into into the compartments. And I just ask because it's becoming very popular, very
Yeah,
wide,
yes.
very
Yes,
very
yes.
widespread, and that's something that I think the organization might want to take a look at down the line. But I'm not sure how it could
Right. Yes. Yeah.
accommodate it. One other question too, which comes to mind. I'm in the process right now of reading Michael Scherer's dramatic historical novel, Killer Angels, which is about the pivotal battle at Gettysburg during the American Civil War. So it's a piece of historical fiction, but incredibly realistic and drawn from documents of the time. Which brings me to this question. You say that you basically focus on national cemeteries. Do you service Confederate cemeteries? And they do exist.
Well, I mean, I know here in Annapolis, the National Cemetery on West Street has both.
Both.
It has both, and they were a soldier that lost their lives here on American soil. So yes, they do get a wreath.
Yeah. So if it's a national cemetery, whoever's buried there, that's
You got it.
That's your defining.
That's the criteria.
That's the criteria.
Yes.
There's some sort of story too that there was a Russian that was buried, and I don't know I don't know how he found his way, but he's also buried at Annapolis, and he too gets a wreath.
Well, we're going to take a break now, but when we return, I've got some additional questions to ask our guests as it relates to the organization Wreaths Across America. Okay, I'm talking today with Stuart Rice and Christina Seidel of Wreaths Across America. Well, your focus is on the laying of wreaths in the Annapolis area. Could you share with our viewers any times in which you have felt that a wreath laying here in Annapolis has been really especially meaningful to you, and that you've really sort of been moved by it?
I got involved in the project in 2009, and at the time, Annapolis National Cemetery was just getting involved in the program. The very first year, I think we were able to raise 200 wreaths, and there's 3,000 grave sites at Annapolis. So it took about 4 years of really hard work, reaching out to the community and getting the donations. Probably on that fourth year, was the most memorable for me because we were able to cover the entire cemetery, which meant that every single gravesite had a wreath that year. And that was very meaningful to me, meaningful to the entire community, that we were able to all come together and make sure that every gravesite was covered. And that basically has been the goal since that point in time, is to make sure that every gravesite has a wreath.
Okay. You make use of volunteers, is that correct?
Yes.
Could you share with our viewers what you actually are able to achieve through the availability of your volunteers?
Well, it's multifold.
Okay.
I think first and foremost, we would love people to volunteer their dollars to support this cause. And then we have 2 days. We have the day where the wreaths are laid, and we have volunteers come out that day. Last year was my first time and volunteering on the day, and there were hundreds of people there to help lay the wreaths. Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, church groups, college alumni groups. So 3,000 graves is a lot.
Yeah.
So everybody gets a wreath or two and lays them on the wreath. And back to the mission statement, we're asked when we lay the wreath is to help remember by saying the name on the grave, to appreciate that person's sacrifice for our country. We also have the day that the wreaths arrive in Annapolis. The truck comes at dark 30, and it's traditionally the coldest day in December. We unload the truck, we store them at the cemetery, and then in January is the cleanup. And the cleanup this year took 20 minutes. Again, a multitude of volunteers coming out. So people can contribute in many ways. Last year we had a volunteer bring coffee and lemonade. And so we're happy to have any volunteer, whether it's in dollars or in service.
Yeah. From what you said earlier, it sounds to me that you make good use of youth in this.
Yes.
And that they have been really active participants with you. Could you say just a few words about that?
Well, Christina's children helped.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
my boys, from the very beginning, my boys have been involved in this project. But their sports teams have been involved with unloading the truck and getting prepared for the day of the ceremony. The Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts have been out there fundraising. I used to have this troop leader that would drop off this huge bag of coins because they would have drives and so on. So it was wonderful. And then they're always out there as well. I've noticed a lot more too of sports teams. High school sports teams are now getting involved, which is nice because when we're taking the boxes off the truck or unloading them and packing them, it's nice to kind of have some bigger folks to help along.
Stronger.
But no, there has always been a huge presence of children, which really is wonderful, and that's really important.
Yeah. And you also earlier mentioned the truck. You may be aware that Wreaths Across America gets a lot of support from the trucking industry. And I see you nodding. And could you elaborate on that in terms of the role that the trucking industry has played both here in Annapolis, but a little broadly around the country? Well,
I mean, think the wreaths are put together and so on all the way up in Maine, and then they have to get to all the different places that they're going in the nation. In the old days, when we first started, it wasn't really a big deal for the truckers to drop off the 4 or 5 boxes for Annapolis. Now we take up an entire huge, whatever it is. But they come trucking down, and we've had the same driver now for about 4 or 5 years. The drivers volunteer their time. The trucking companies volunteer their trucks. And it's just an amazing sight to see this huge truck show up at 6 in the morning, pulling up right in front, and the lights are on, and it's actually kind of fun. People drive by and they see the big logo, and it's actually kind of exciting.
What purpose do the dollars that are contributed to Wreaths Across America here in Annapolis go? In other words, you mentioned earlier that one good way for people to get involved is to make donations to it. What are the donations used for?
The wreaths.
In other words, they actually
Yes. They're buying the wreaths.
they basically buy the wreaths.
Buy the wreaths,
So
yes.
so that basically is that the extent of your actual money raising? It's just
Yes.
It's just the wreaths,
Yes,
and that's all.
just the wreaths.
That's it.
I don't think
We're
there's
all
any-
volunteers,
All
so
volunteers.
it is
There's no,
just the wreaths.
so it's an all volunteer organization. 100% of the money that's raised goes just to the wreaths, and everything else is donated, contributed, gifted. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, I think it's important for people to understand
Yeah,
this.
absolutely.
This is an extraordinary effort, and you consider around the country, and you're doing it on virtually on people's own goodwill because the wreaths are
Yes.
just $15
Yes.
each.
Right.
Which leads me to a question: is there's lots of organizations people can get involved in. What motivated each of you to become involved in Wreaths Across America? Why did you select it?
Let's see, it was 2009, it was Veterans Day, and I thought, oh, it would be wonderful for our family to, participate in some sort of, event or something, and I found Wreaths Across America. And when I went online and I saw that Annapolis National Cemetery was not participating, and I thought, oh boy. Because I'm just that kind of person. So the next thing I know, I'm hitting the button saying, yes, I will be the location leader. I had no idea what I was doing, nothing, and here we are, 6-7 years later. It's been wonderful. It's been brought so much to my life and to everybody, my children and my family and friends and hopefully the community. And now Stuart is going to take over, and she'll do a wonderful, wonderful job.
I will. I got involved. I'm a member of the Peggy Stewart Tea Party DAR chapter
Okay.
here in Annapolis, and our chapter has always contributed.
Always contributed. You're
Always
right.
contributed, and we do. We're given a piece of paper at the meeting, and there was an email 2 years ago saying, help unload the truck, and I helped unload the truck, and then Christina was looking for someone to help her last year, and I fell prey to her wily ways, and and I learned a lot from her last year, and now I'm the locator for Annapolis.
Yeah. What is the greatest ongoing needs of your local organization here in Annapolis?
Ongoing needs, I would say that every year we have to basically start from scratch with raising funds to cover the cemetery. So I guess would be donations.
Yes, I mean the amount of people who showed up on the Saturday was overwhelming, such that you couldn't. It was people didn't get 10 or 15 wreaths to lay as they had perhaps in the past.
Yeah.
That so the volunteerism that day is, I don't want to say covered, but it is the monies to have all the wreaths that I think is the biggest concern, to make sure we keep with Christina's fabulous work of covering the cemetery.
Yeah. How does one go about getting a wreath placed for a loved one?
Online, wreathsacrossamerica.com, and it's very simple. It'll say donate, and it walks you through all the steps of how many you would like, if you want to just purchase one, if you want to purchase several. It will also ask you what location. So of course, if you are living in the Annapolis area but have a loved one who's buried at Arlington or in California, you can designate it that. But most folks will designate Annapolis, and we do take personal requests. If they want to lay a wreath in honor of somebody, we can do that as well, and we have.
Yeah. Do you find that let me put it this way. Do you find that participation in this event gives you a great deal of personal satisfaction in terms of being able to honor those who have served and passed away? And could you elaborate a little bit about that, about how the kind of feelings that you get as a result of taking part in Wreaths across America?
Well, as I said, that last year was my first year,
Yeah.
and having not experienced it before, it was very impressive to be told about the remembering portion of the mission statement, and you drive by that cemetery every day almost, and you just know it humanizes the experience of those who are interred there. And my husband was in the military, his father, my father, so we do appreciate people's service, and it's a day to remember that.
Do you find that is there any specific event, historical event, that is recognized by Wreaths across America in terms of a particular? Let me put it this way: Are there veterans from certain wars whose families are especially interested in having their loved ones remembered?
I think the day, at least at Annapolis, the day of, I think one of the nice parts of the ceremony is that they ask for a veteran from each branch of the military to lay the wreath. And that's one of my favorite parts of the entire ceremony, is when we ask for that volunteer. And you sometimes have a young guy that maybe just got back from Iraq.
Okay.
Sometimes you have an older gentleman that might have been from Korea, from the Korean War or so on. And I just love how they each come and step forward, and each one of them have a different story and a different life experience. But they're there that day to recognize, and remember the folks that aren't there.
And I think that it's not a day.
Yeah.
It's not a specific war or
Right.
whatever. It's wreaths
Right.
on to decorate for the holiday season and to remember.
And looking back again in terms of where the organization came from, are there any changes in the format of the program, changes in terms of activities that you're involved with here locally in Annapolis, that you think you might want to consider in terms of the future?
I think that the national organization itself has definitely branched out into more of a yearly activities and events and so on. They have one that I really like, and I would also recommend folks to like the Wreaths Across America page on Facebook, because they just send you just wonderful sentiments and days to remember of. And the one that I like the best, though, is what they send is they say their name. And I might cry, but it's say their name, and it's a soldier that's passed, and they say their name, and I love that.
If viewers would like to have more information about your organization, or would like to participate in a wreath laying, or would like to attend the local ceremony here in mid-December, or one at Arlington National Cemetery, how can they get in touch with you? I suspect a lot of viewers are going to want to reach out to you and become involved with this. This is something I think would be especially appealing here in the city of Annapolis and in Anne Arundel County. You mentioned before your website. Could you repeat the address of your website? And if you've got other ways that people can contact you, this is a good time to to share that.
You give your contact info.
Okay. Well, yes, there is on the Wreaths Across America page, and if you search for the Annapolis Cemetery, there's a donate and a volunteer button. And those emails, once you volunteer, that information comes to us.
And what actually is the site? www. Do you know what it is?
It's
wreathsacrossamerica.com.
Perfect. So very easy.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you for viewing our program today, and please join us again on Annapolis Mosaics. If you would like more information about the Annapolis Human Relations Commission, jot down the information on your screen. You can reach us at 410-263-7998 or by email at hrcommission@annapolis.gov. Or check out our page at the City of Annapolis website. Go to www.annapolis.gov, click on the city government icon, and then Boards and Commissions, and then scroll down to the Human Relations Commission page. And always remember the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who said, "We have flown the air like birds and swum the seas like fishes, but have yet to learn the simple act of walking the earth as brothers and sisters."